Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elly Brooker. I'm the marketing manager at Garçon Wines. I'm really glad to be here today to speak to you about sustainable wine packaging in the 21st century. So a big thank you to the Alcohol Trends and Innovations Conference for inviting me to speak. I've pre-recorded my talk so that I can be available live right now in the chat box to answer any questions as we go along. So to start with, I thought I'd show you a series of images and I'd like you to see if you can spot what looks out of place in each. That's number one, number two, and number three. So I'm guessing despite my excellent efforts at Photoshop, you could tell that in the first two images, the penny farthing and the typewriter are out of place in our modern 21st century, having first been invented in the 19th century and long replaced by the latest urban road bike or MacBook Pro. But I don't blame you if the last one has you stumped, and that is because it's a photo which I took of my dining table just a few days ago, featuring another 19th century product, so the 19th century wine bottle. And then unlike the other two examples on this slide, the 19th century bottle has remained relatively unchanged in the past 2 centuries. So the 19th century wine bottle was itself an advancement of an earlier version of the wine bottle invented by this man, Sir Kenelm Digby, in the 17th century. And he invented the first commercially available wine bottles at scale, which were the onion bottles with a bulbous base and a long neck, designed to store smaller volumes of wine than was typical of the time. Fast forward 2 centuries to the 19th century, and the French came along and developed the bottles which are closer to what we know today. So the Burgundy bottle and the Bordeaux bottle, and they changed the shape to have straighter sides to be more spatially efficient as wine began to be transported further distances across the globe. Fast forward 2 centuries again, and when consumers walk into a supermarket or buy wine online, the 19th century bottle is still the dominant packaging format which they have to choose from. But we're in the 21st century, and in 2021, despite the obvious challenges of COVID-19, we're facing environmental and economical challenges and complexities too. And while the glass bottle undeniably rocks emotionally and looks beautiful, they're no longer functional or environmentally friendly due to their fragility, their heaviness, and their spatial inefficiency. So what challenges and complexities am I talking about? Well, firstly, wine is produced, transported, and consumed across the world at a scale completely unparalleled to the 19th century and any other consumer packaged good. So much so that when we go into a supermarket, the shelves are often organized for wine based on their country of origin, which again is unlike most other grocery products. And this data from the UK, which is the second largest wine importing country and also consumes a lot of wine too. This data here for the off-trade shows that of the top 10 countries which we consume wine from, 66% of that volume comes from the New World. So traveling thousands of miles to get to the UK from the likes of Australia, the USA, New Zealand, South Africa. And it just shows the extent to which there is demand for wines from throughout the world. Number two is online sales, and that's become a staple of the 21st century, with grocery sales soaring and wine sales online also soaring as well. Now, it was a trend before COVID-19, but expectedly, the pandemic and the lockdowns have accelerated the trend, so much so that in the first lockdown last year, wine online searches were up by over 1,000% in the UK, and it's a similar story in America, with some companies reporting a month bigger than Christmas. In the wider alcoholic drinks industry, online sales for alcohol accounted for 4.8% of total alcohol sales in 2019, and in 2020 that figure is expected to rise to 8.6%. And even once taking into account the lockdown spikes, it's predicted that the value of online alcohol sales is going to be 50% higher by 2024 than it was in 2019. And our existing wine packaging is just not cut out for e-commerce. These two examples here from frustrated consumers illustrate the point really well, that they just require so much excessive protective packaging to protect a fragile bottle and to fit around a bottle which just is spatially efficient anyway. And the growth in online wine sales is inevitable, so we really need to adapt packaging to make the most of that opportunity. Number three, changing consumer behaviors. Well, Consumers are wanting to live a more sustainable lifestyle nowadays, and this huge spike in searches from April last year just demonstrates that trend. It's already translating into action, with this study from Capgemini showing that 79% of consumers may or already have changed their purchasing preferences based on social, economic, or environmental impact. And perhaps one of the most encouraging findings is that 71% of people agree that climate change is just as important in the long run as COVID-19, which thankfully shows that the tremendous efforts of these amazing humans, Greta Thunberg and her school strikes, and the message from Sir David Attenborough that we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale and our greatest threat in thousands of years, is really paying off in raising awareness and showing the impact and changes that consumers can make if we pay attention to this message. Because climate crisis truly is an existential threat, is one of the most significant challenges we're facing in 2021 as a species. Our planet is on fire and temperatures are soaring. Last year, the highest temperature reliably recorded on Earth was recorded in Death Valley, and 2020 is on track to be tied for the top place of the top hottest years on record. And the top 10 records have all been made and broken in the 21st century. Rising temperatures are being caused because of record-breaking levels of CO2 in our atmosphere. We've already surpassed 415 parts per million. And just for perspective on that, the safe level is around 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And while there is no vaccination for climate crisis, focusing on reducing our emissions is the best hope if we're to be able to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, which is the figure that the IPCC has said will help limit the impact that climate crisis would have on our human and natural ecosystems. Now, in the wine industry, the effects of global warming are devastatingly plain to see, with rising temperatures having an influence on extreme weather events, on harvests, and we're going to start to see more devastating images like this, where wildfires are jeopardizing livelihoods in California and Australia too. Slashing the carbon footprint of the industry is going to be key to help mitigate these effects, and there is a low-hanging fruit which we can target, which is packaging. Because the glass bottle is the single largest contributor to wine's carbon footprint. And this Californian study shows that it represents 29% of the carbon footprint. And when you add in secondary packaging and transport, that figure rises to 51%. Just to put that into perspective, we consume the equivalent of around 33 to 35 billion bottles per year of this 19th century format. And in the UK, it's around 1.8 billion bottles. In the words of Andrew Jefford, one of the world's leading wine writers, that carbon footprint is grotesque and unnecessary. So, in the 21st century of complex supply chains, digital sales, resource scarcity, and climate change, the dominant wine packaging format is no longer fit for purpose. And it presents us with an opportunity to innovate in packaging to meet these environmental and economic demands. So I'd like to share with you what we're doing at Garçon Wines, and we're making the wine industry more sustainable through innovating in packaging, starting with our eco-flat wine bottles, which have IP protection for 35 wine drinking countries across the world. We're bringing the wine bottle into the 21st century with a step change innovation from the 17th century bottle by Digby to the 19th century bottles of the French to ours, which is an advancement of the format which consumers know and love. Now, I say it's an advancement because our bottle is still a bottle, it still looks like a bottle. We've retained the beauty and the emotional connection by taking a cross-section design of the traditional Bordeaux shape to respect the heritage and the tradition of the industry. But our bottles are better bottles. So what's different? Well, we've taken 3 relevant and meaningful advancements, so shape innovation, best-in-class material, and recyclability by design. Starting with shape innovation. So through innovating in shape, our bottles are 40% spatially smaller than round glass bottles. We've gone flat to save space, and it means that bottles pack like books with the increased surface area contact. And importantly, we keep 750 ml, so the standard volume. By going flat, it has direct benefits on reducing logistics costs and carbon emissions. And in some instances, we can get up to 91% more wine or almost double the amount of wine on a pallet. The clever design has also allowed us to unlock game-changing secondary packaging, with the example here of our 10 flat bottle case for e-commerce developed with packaging giant DS Smith. And through packing the bottles vertically and horizontally in the airspace around the bottleneck, we eliminate almost all unused airspace, pack a product far more efficiently, and this means that we can dramatically reduce carbon emissions and logistics costs, again, from the supply chain. It also means we can fit 2.5 times the amount of wine in the same amount of space, in this instance, fitting 10 bottles in the space which would otherwise fit just 4 round glass bottles. So our bottles are using the best-in-class material for wine bottles, which is 100% recycled PET, pre-existing material, not single-use plastic. And this helps put material which is already in circulation back to good use to help limit the creation of new plastic. PET is also most commonly used for food and beverage packaging, like soft drinks and mineral water bottles. The lightweight material means that our bottles are also 87% lighter than glass bottles, and weight savings have a direct impact in reducing carbon emissions in transport. Recycled PET also has a significantly lower carbon footprint than both virgin PET and glass, and uses far less energy in production. So as well as being made from 100% recycled PET, our bottles are 100% recyclable after, as PET is one of the most widely recycled plastics, with 100% of UK councils offering curbside recycling. We've chosen a specific PP cap and label to ensure recyclability and avoid mixed material contamination in recycling streams. Importantly, this means that it's easy for consumers to recycle after use. They just put the cap back on and dispose of it in the recycling bin without having to separate or dismantle packaging after enjoying the contents inside. And I think it's important to draw attention to the fact that plastics is as a simple term which groups together a whole range of polymers, some of which are commonly recyclable, like PET, and some of which are almost never recycled. And it's those types which should be banned outright for certain short-life product use, like packaging. Grouping all of these materials together under the term plastic is unhelpful, and Blue Planet 2 has rightly raised awareness of the issue of the mismanagement of some plastics and plastic pollution in our environment. But we need a switch in mindset to see those good types of plastic not as pollution or waste, but as a valuable resource which we can fund, so we can fund and fuel its collection and contribute to circular models to help mitigate those adverse environmental effects. The important thing is to be plastic smart. We should realize that there are those good types and bad types of plastic. Using the good type as we do, which is 100% recycled, recyclable, energy efficient, lightweight, low carbon, means that we're using the right material responsibly. And importantly, it's a readily available material rather than a concept which is ready to address our industry's carbon footprint problem now. For wine bottles, no other material can compete at the moment. So what is our packaging used for? Well, we started off with our own branded products and letterbox wine. So the flat shape means that the bottles can fit through an average UK letterbox, which I'm sure you can imagine has seen huge growth in demand last year amongst our business customers, for instance, Bloom & Wild and Moonpig. As well as the convenience benefit that offers consumers, a seamless in-home delivery is also contact-free, which is so important at this time. And that's our own brands, and we've also developed to offer our packaging solutions to other brands. And here are a few examples of recent launches. So Philip Schofield has just launched his first bottle of wine using our flat format to develop his range of existing range of bag-in-box. It's doing really well on Amazon, again, because of those convenience benefits. But sustainability and eco-friendliness in particular is also something close to Philip Schofield's heart, which is why he's chosen our sustainable format. And the other example here, so Australian wine giants and the UK's #1 wine company, Accolade Wines, are using our packaging for some of their brands in the Nordics. And most recently, they launched their eco-friendly brand, Bamrock Station, in Co-op supermarket stores in the UK, again, using our sustainable bottle. And there's, of course, many benefits to the flat bottle in supermarket settings, because you can fit so much more product onto the shelf and maximize shelf value and shelf volume. And it's far easier for consumers to transport and fit in their bags and like to carry home. The better bottles are more sustainable bottles, and these relevant and highly effective improvements, going flat to save space, 100% recycled PET to save weight and energy, and recyclability by design to contribute to circular models, means that our bottles can drastically help reduce carbon emissions and business costs from throughout the supply chain, because more wine transports in the same amount of space. Again, quoting Andrew Jefford, he says that no single action would make more difference to reducing carbon footprint in the wine world than the swift adoption of bottles like ours for every wine designed to be drunk on purchase. And the bottles also have great benefits for consumers. Some great user-generated content, which we've seen on socials, of just consumers packing wine into their fridge really efficiently, enjoying it on the go, enjoying the recyclability and the lightweight, and the fact that they can drink it outdoors and in small spaces like caravans. This means that our packaging contributes to triple bottom line sustainability. So a healthier planet, a wealthier industry, and happier consumers. So where next, and how can we help encourage an adoption of packaging, sustainable packaging throughout the industry? Well, firstly, I think we need to recognise and communicate that there is more to sustainability than just eco-friendliness. We often see the two terms used interchangeably, which is almost a form of greenwashing, because it misses the bigger picture that a real balance of these three pillars, social and economic and environmental, can all help have a better impact on our future overall. It's why, in addition to the lower carbon footprint and recycling messaging, that we place so much emphasis on how bottles are still a bottle, still aesthetically pleasing, still consumer pleasing, the whole range of benefits to consumers in different settings, as well as the fact that they can help reduce business costs and improve efficiencies for businesses, because that's a more sustainable solution which is likely to be adopted, and therefore in the long run can actually have a better chance at making a greater environmental impact. Secondly, brands have the responsibility to raise awareness and educate consumers with clear recycling messaging that thinks about the whole life cycle of the packaging, rather than being misleading or sensationalist. And I think a great example of this is the miscommunication of plastics as one group, as well as, in particular, how messaging like plastic free could cement in consumers' minds that all plastic is the enemy, which is just not true. It's why we highlight the importance of using the right materials responsibly, as we do with 100% recycled PET, and the impact of this on the entire life cycle. We also encourage the brands which we work with to do the same on their on-pack messaging to help educate consumers about the material choices and its impact across the life cycle. And finally, we need to remember that with the right actions and the right messaging, we can help avoid leading to unintended consequences, like encouraging shifts in behaviour and causing misinformation and confusion about materials and packaging choices, which could actually be more damaging from a carbon emission perspective or waste pollution perspective if our infrastructure can't keep up. And hopefully there'll be way more innovations in the future in materials which we could use for our packaging, but it's why we call 100% recycled PET best in class for wine bottles at the moment, because they're low carbon, recycled, recyclable, But importantly, we have more of that infrastructure in place to manage the resource responsibly. So at Garçon Wines, we've challenged the base assumption that wine bottles need to be round and made of glass to communicate a change in the way in which we do things for a more sustainable future. We have a unique platform to do this in the rest of the industry too, because alcoholic drinks tend to have that social and convivial connection, and they can help start those conversations that get people thinking. In our case, if wine bottles don't need to be round and made of glass, what else could we change to be more adapted to our needs in 2021 and beyond for future generations? And by doing so, we can help bring wine packaging and other alcoholic drinks packaging into the 21st century. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that presentation. I hope I've also managed to answer your questions in the chat box, but if not, our contact details are up there and our Twitter handles. So please do get in touch. Big thank you again to the Alcohol Trends and Innovations Conference for inviting me to speak today, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your afternoon.